Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mighty Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to talk about the brand new IceRiver ALEO ASIC, the AE2. You guys remember we did a video regarding the AE3 a few weeks ago. Turns out, looks like that guy is Fugazi, a fake. Looks like it's actually the AE2. Specs are slightly different. We did potentially learn a few more things. We're going to talk about it as well as give an overall update on ALEO ASIC mining. We'll talk about how the little AE0 is doing and give our overall thoughts and opinions on this thing to see if this thing is worth it. If that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. So just as a precursor, has not officially been announced. So we realistically have to wait for the official word from IceRiver. But again, it does seem like we have consensus here that this is going to be the unit. Okay, so the AE3, which we talked about a few weeks ago, that was 600 mega hash at 1,000 watts. Looks like that guy is not happening. It looks like it's actually going to be the AE2, which kind of makes more sense, especially even on the naming front. Typically, the 3 is probably going to be the big boy unit that comes out. If you guys remember with like the Caspa ASICs, the KS2, this kind of falls more in line. Okay, so the updated specs as of now, again, this isn't official. We realistically have to wait for the official IceRiver tweet. But currently 720 mega hash, which is a decent bump up from the previous specs of the other unit, at about 1300 watts. Okay, so key standouts, just glancing at it. Number one, we can see right off the bat, it is slightly less efficient, right? The joules per mega hash is actually a little bit higher than what was spec'd on the AE3. Kind of oddly enough, it's right in between the two different chips, it seems like, right? It seems like they're having bending issues or consistency issues. So if you guys remember, even with the AE0, the specs were bumped up last minute, right? It was initially 50 mega hash at the 100 watts. It got bumped up to 60, which increased the efficiency to 1.67, which initially was going to be about 2, right? And we noticed with the AE1 Lite, one of the variants, it did go back down to the 2, right? And there is that 300 mega hash variant that was announced that is 1.67. So it's kind of funny that it's literally right in the middle, right? It's actually 1.81 joules to mega hash, so just something to kind of note there. The other thing we're speculating, our concern with the AE3, which again is going to be non-existent with in regards to like thermals, right? The pictures that were listed were like a little box miner thing. Even right now, some of them are still listing or still showing a picture of a little box thing. Even for this guy, to me, 1,000 watts was a pretty extreme stretch on such a little unit with those little baby fans being so compact. Being 1,300 watts, I think it almost guarantees it's not going to be that form factor, right? We haven't got confirmation as to what the form factor is going to be. Again, we have to wait for official confirmation from IceRiver. But I would speculate it's definitely going to be a bigger shell, right? Whether it's going to be something like a 3U type thing, like the Jazz miners and the Flu miner and such, or is it going to be a throwback to, if you guys remember, like the KS2, right? It is potential for it to be something like that also. NHash did put up a picture of actually what was the KS2, if you guys remember that thing, where it was a big boy shell, kind of a miniature PSU. This is why it kind of looks a little bit awkward here. But the downfall is that this is not going to be a silent little at-home miner, right? This thing is going to be big, it is going to be loud, and it's going to produce a lot of heat, right? Which, depending on your viewpoint, could be a disadvantage, right? Again, the benefits with having a unit that with this type of wattage is for that flexibility of being able to run it in your home. Depends on your allocation, what kind of like breakers you have, what kind of outlets you have, etc., etc. So just depending on your situation, to me, you have more versatility with it being a quiet at-home ASIC versus something like this, right? Which even at this wattage, we've seen it now that it's doable, right? It's doable for it to be relatively quiet. We've seen like the little Jazz miner has their, or not Jazz miner, Gold Shell has their little Echo series. We're just seeing it right now with that Canon Avalon Q, that it is doable, right? So kind of a weird choice. Maybe they had spare shells from previous generations, or maybe other ASICs that what they were going to do. Who knows the reasoning, but it just is a little bit weird, right? So could be a negative, could be a positive in a certain light if you like density. Again, the benefit of having like this unit instead of the two small guys, instead of having two of the A1 lights, less parts to replace. It's only one PSU versus the two. thermals are going to probably be better. Longevity might be a little bit better just because it is going to stay cooler potentially with the larger fans. And it also makes it easier to install more aftermarket fans, whether it's like an AC Infinity type thing, things of that sort. Because again, typically with a lot of these, not all of these, you want to keep them as cool as possible, right? We do know some ASICs do like to run hot. It's just very dependent there, right? Um, Another thing to note is kind of weird sizing, right? This is something we saw back in the Caspa days, but we didn't see it necessarily with some of the other algos, or like a lithium. They were kind of more in a rush, right? They went from essentially the light to the AE3. Okay, to me, a lot of that had to do with them knowing that bitmain was coming out with their unit. The fact that they're coming out with another mid tier like this, because again, they already do have the A1 light. This is just like a secondary, larger, more of a true mid tier. So the fact that they are releasing this now, or releasing this period, is kind of indicative that maybe they think that they have a little bit of time between what? The bitmain unit, right? Which is kind of where the concern would be, because realistically, this guy is so much more efficient than any of the gold shells, right? That was a concern previously, I guess, somewhat, but now with probably this release, however many people end up buying it, it's kind of killing all the gold shells, right? Realistically, it doesn't make sense to get any of them. They already kind of revealed their cards, even their big boy unit, their 3300 water, this AE2. This is also probably a reason they picked the 720 mega hash, is because it's literally double of that AE max, right? It's kind of funny that it worked out that way, but I guarantee you there was probably a reason for that. And it just makes a mockery of it, right? At this point, again, the AE max is 3,300 watts versus the 1,300 watts of the IceRiver unit, right? So a massive, massive difference in efficiency. So realistically, Gold Shell is no longer a threat. They can kind of control the hash rate in a sense, just because there's no competition from here until bitmain comes. And again, like we mentioned before, it's not a speculative thing. They've announced it, right? This is a press release from them that they plan to launch one. Again, this was quite a while ago though, and it is a little bit weird that they've mentioned absolutely nothing about it. So they've said they're going to do it. Whether or not they actually do it though is a different story. Maybe they changed their mind since then. Maybe they're having issues. We have no idea, right? But to me, this launch is kind of indicative that maybe they think they have a little bit more time. Whether it pans out or not, we're going to have to wait and see, but that is going to be your just biggest risk factor here, is how long till bitmain's bigger unit, and we know IceRiver is also eventually going to have a larger unit, right? The only kind of advantage, or the only kind of thing you have going for you here, is that it is a heftier unit, right? It's not like with the AE0 where you'll need 35 of those things to equal one big boy unit. At this point, it's about a third of a big boy unit, right? So at this point, it is a little bit heftier, and does give us some kind of insight into potentially the price point of that larger unit. Because again, this guy being about a third, it's about 4K. Don't be surprised that if some announcement does come for that large unit to come in potentially under 10K. Obviously, it's going to be dependent on ALEO's price though, right? All the pricing is going to be based on this and based on what happens here in the future. It depends on how high the hash rate goes. Again, there's a lot of factors here, but those are things to consider here. As we look as far as this thing being an overall value, again, we have to wait for the official confirmation, but again, there does seem to be somewhat of a consensus in this range, anywhere from 3,500 to like 4,200. So somewhere in that ballpark is where it does seem like it's going to play out. So there is a slight advantage in cost to megahash in comparison with like the AE1 Lite. To me, though, I don't think it's a big enough savings to kind of justify the risk. The reason I'm saying it's a little bit riskier is, number one, the wait. Okay, it's not going to ship until July 15th to July 30th. Supposedly, again, we don't have official word yet. That means you're not going to get it until the second week of August if things go as planned, right? So time isn't on your side with these things. With these types of things, you want to get it ASAP, okay? So for me, the savings you're getting isn't necessarily enough to wait that other month and go that route, right? Also losing the flexibility of the smaller guy and the fact that it's kind of a less risk factor because you're investing less initial capital on the AE1 Lite versus the AE2, which again, $4,000 is a little bit hefty, especially with all the risk factors being in this case, right? So don't see enough of a benefit for me realistically. A better price point for waiting at that point, maybe 29.99 would be a little bit better. Like that would potentially be more appealing. At that point, it would be a decent savings over this guy. Because again, we know that the more units come on, the lower your yield's going to be. And so far, a lot of the alts have not been performing too well. So I wouldn't necessarily bank on, oh yeah, in a couple of weeks it's going to. We don't know, right? We have to kind of go based off of their current trends, the current sentiment, what's going on currently, and as of now, realistically, it's not very good, right? So at that price point, I would kind of stay away. Realistically, any of the larger guys, I would kind of stay away, right? Like if you're interested, the AE0 wasn't a bad play so far. It's been doing okay. These guys are somewhat riskier at this point. I would honestly just wait for the big boy if you're interested, right? Again, the risk there is anything can happen. What if next month ALEO does pop to 40 cents, goes to 50 cents, then obviously when that bigger unit does come out, it's going to be expensive as hell. Or even this AE2 is going to go up in price. So you're kind of playing that game, but for me, there's not enough reward for the risk taken in either scenario. At this point, I would rather risk it, and if a big boy unit comes out and ALEO's still struggling and it's relatively cheap, maybe a consideration. But to me, it's not worth it at this point, right? I would much rather just wait for the big boy. Because again, at this point, it's not going to be a little at-home ASIC if this is what we're getting, right? At the end of the day, we don't know. My guess is going to be something like this. I think a better form factor would be something like the Gold Shell, like the Echo Line, like the Jazz Miner, like the Avalon Q. That would be a better form factor just because, again, it is quiet. So there still is potential to have it indoors or like on a 20 amp circuit. This guy, you lose that flexibility, right? So to me, it's not enough of a savings factor for justifying the weight and for justifying the price and for justifying the risk. The price needs to be a little bit better. Um, so again, we have to wait for the official specs, the official shell, because again, if you want a home miner, this is definitely going to be something that is going to be appealing to you or not appealing to you. Wait for the official price, but based off of this price, based off of what this potentially may be, it's not too appealing, honestly. Right? When we compare to the competition, though, yes, it's definitely better, but I mean, again, this thing was a dud from the get-go. The gold shells, as we've talked about previously, its efficiency is longevity, right? And anybody who purchased any of these things, including the little Echo, you hopefully know exactly what we're talking about now. And shit hasn't even hit the fan yet, right? We don't even really have a true big boy yet, and they're already wrecked. Okay, so factor those kinds of things in. Again, the biggest risk factor is you're just waiting to see how long till the big boy unit comes out, right? Because just understand though that yes, people get fixated on this. Oh man, it's gonna make 21 bucks a day. If ALEO's price stays where it's at, we know the hash rate is gonna continue up, and it's not going to be that, right? If ALEO's price does go up, then maybe it can keep up with it. Will it keep up to the extent that the hash rate may go up? It's really hard to say. I mean, and even on that front, you're kind of screwed either way also. Let's say it gets closer to release. We're now August 1st, and ALEO is now at 35, 40 cents. Like, oh man, now it's time to jump in because the profitability is 35, 40 bucks, whatever it may be. It's kind of more of a worst case scenario because guess what? There's going to be even more hype with it, and it's going to guarantee that hash rate's going to blow up even more. Okay, so you're kind of almost better off for things to kind of be mellow, fly under the radar. It gives you more time to stack, right? When things are very hot, it's not going to pan out too well, right? You kind of want things almost to do so-so and eventually pop farther down the line. Again, because of where we're at in this market, though, where we're at in this cycle, the longer we're in it, it just gets riskier and harder as we go, especially if the traditional cycle does end up playing off, where we do peak sometime in Q3, Q4. Again, it's giving you a very limited window to maximize the results here. Okay, so just understand those things, understand the dynamics, and understand also we don't know, right? We're predicating this on what's happened in the past. Will that happen again? We have no idea. Maybe we're just kind of going sideways until mid 2026. We have no idea, but for me personally, I'm going to base it off previous history. I'm going to base it off what's going on. I'm going to base it off more of the worst case scenarios and play off that factor. I'm not going to consider the best case scenarios because we don't know what's going to happen. right? Again, if there's a worst case scenario or a more realistic potential scenario, that's gonna be what I kind of go with, right? I tend to be more conservative because at that point, if you're looking at worst case scenarios and it makes sense, that's kind of the go-to, right? So at this point, where we're at right now with what ALEO's doing, with how high the hash rate is it a play? To me, honestly, it's more of a gamble, right? I would have more consistency with a big boy unit with 3500 water, and realistically even more consistency once we know the specs of this thing if it releases. Again, we're predicating a lot of this stuff on this thing. We don't even know if this thing's going to release. Again, I find it extremely odd that this late in the game they've been super quiet. Not even a pre-release window, because we've seen them do that too, just to kind of wreck the other companies. When they see an announcement, they'll come in and they'll make their announcement, and even if it's not going to launch for another 3-4 months, right? Just with the anticipation of wrecking that other company, right? If their specs are significantly better. But if they do announce and it turns out it's very similar to this type of efficiency, this is definitely going to work out in your favor, right? So a lot of things to consider here, a lot of things to factor in, but to me, ultimately, it's a lot of risk. And at this time, with prices of altcoins where they are at, it's very hard to justify damn near any ASIC. Again, if ALEO's at 60 cents, then it's a different story. But considering where ALEO's price is at currently, it's gonna probably make more sense to just buy the freaking coin. I mean, at this point, you could buy 21,000 ALEO for that price, right? So, again, if we even just look at it from that perspective, again, we always like to do a basic calculation of seeing how long it would take. Again, currently you would earn about 112 per day. So, under that, guys, let's pull up a calculator. So, let's take our 21,000 we would make by just buying it outright and divide it by the 112 you'd be yielding a day. Again, 187.5, which doesn't sound bad, but again, the hash rate, depending on what happens, can potentially double. It can potentially take way longer. Or maybe it may not. Again, for the risk, it's not the worst thing in the world, but for me, it's just risky at this point, right? Realistically, I'd rather go with one of the smaller guys because, again, price to mega hash is fairly close. Efficiency is pretty much on there, and it's less initial capital risk. A better play, honestly, for me, if you are all about it, getting an AE1 Lite and then buying maybe the other $2,000 worth of ALEO outright, right? There's different things you can consider. Realistically, honestly, neither one are too super appealing. Again, with these things, the only people who tend to make out well are people who get on the first batch and you get an extended period of time to mine, or once the big boy comes out, potentially going in there, right? So different risk factors, different things to think about, but considering the capital investment, $4,000, in comparison to what you can get altcoin wise, because everything is still pretty much on fire sale currently, it's definitely a hard bargain, right? Right now, realistically, a lot of these ASICs, in my opinion, are still overpriced. They need to come down to reality with where this market is, okay? So make sure you understand those dynamics. Let's take a quick look, actually, before I forget, the AE0. Just as an update, overall, it's been doing okay. It's pretty much been flat. We've been earning about 10 ALEO a day pretty much this past month, right? And if we look at the overall hash rate, we can kind of even see it here. You can pretty much see since May 25th, it's been fairly consistent, right? It's gone up a couple of ticks, but nothing really there. Pretty much people who got that initial batch of the AE1 Lite, that's been those people that plugged in. Again, it's not super popular just because, again, timing, risk factor, etc. So I kind of see the same story happening even with this guy. Like, yes, it's initially going to be appealing for some. You definitely are going to bump up the hash rate. Is it going to be something where it's going to like double, triple? Honestly, probably not, unless something happens with ALEO's price. So again, for any guys who got one of these AE0s, this is the type of scenario you're kind of looking for, right? Because it's just giving you more time to stack, right? We'll see what ALEO ends up doing in these next 6 months. Maybe it pops, maybe it doesn't. That's when we'll be able to really evaluate whether or not any of these were worth it, okay? So let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think of the casing? Do you think it's going to be something like the KS2? Do you see something more like the 3U design? Are they going to come up with something different? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I am out.